Hello, Romain Veillon speaking, GSK Vaccines. I am here to talk to you about PDA that has always been at the forefront of the visual inspection. And John is here with you today. John, since when have you started to do the PDA conference for visual inspection?
Hello, Romain. This is John Shabushnig from Inside Pharma Consulting. And we started the Visual Inspection Forum in the year 2001. So this will be the 20th anniversary of the Visual Inspection Forum. And I certainly have to acknowledge the contributions of Gerhard Rösling and Marcus Lonkers in putting this meeting together. We, at that time, saw a real need for discussion on this important topic in the industry, and we were excited to have the support of PDA to bring this meeting together. The very first meeting was in Berlin, and as you know, we'll be back in Berlin again this fall, and looking very much forward to that meeting.
And in the light of the current COVID crisis, why do you think it's so important, the visual inspection process today?
Well, I certainly think that visual inspection is a key element in the manufacturing process under any circumstances. It's an important part of knowing that your process is under control. It's something that your customer can see readily in terms of product quality. I think in the current COVID-19 crisis, I think our concerns there are not letting visual inspection slow down the process. Sometimes the validation processes, the qualification processes for new products can be quite long. And we want to make sure that visual inspection is not a constraint in getting important products, vaccines, therapies to market for the people, for really the entire world who is dealing with this pandemic.
Hello, I'm John Ayers, a member of the Visual Inspection Forum Planning Committee and a medical doctor. And I've had the privilege to work in this industry for the past 15 or so years and with PDA. Visual inspection of parenteral products has been a very important aspect of my work due to the link between defective units and potential safety effects. Today, society as a whole and the pharmaceutical industry specifically are facing what we hope is a once-in-a-lifetime challenge. The coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic has turned a spotlight on pharmaceutical science, manufacturing, and supply. The more obvious aspect involves the need for an effective COVID-19 vaccine. I believe we have the capacity to manufacture the units necessary to ultimately achieve global community immunity in the not-so-distant future. But public and political focus on speed will present some significant pressures on these manufacturers. In the majority of the world community, the timelines to develop and test a new therapy are beyond their general expectations of immediate fulfillment. The less obvious issue is the high number of parenteral units needed to support those patients stricken with the virus and needing advanced medical support in the intensive care unit. The stringent public health response to limit the spread of the virus through shelter-in-place quarantine has really been the only effective method to avoid overwhelming our healthcare resource capacity. This includes both hospital beds and healthcare worker numbers and the medication needed to treat these patients. Unlike manufacturing capacity, the medications used for hospital-based care likely show a fairly stable utilization pattern absent geopolitical conflict or a natural disaster. But even those scenarios tend to be time limited or geographically localized such that drug shortages are unusual. The coronavirus presents a very different picture and a challenge that we have to deal with. Supplies cannot be easily pulled from one location to another, and we lack the manufacturing capacity reserve to adequately increase supply to meet this extraordinary demand. These patients require life-saving intravenous therapies, and the list of intravenous medications, parenteral medications needed is considerable. Large volume IV fluids, sedation therapies, muscle relaxers and paralytics, antibiotics, pressors such as nitroprusside for shock, and so forth. This brings us back to visual inspection capabilities. When we face a situation where every unit is extremely valuable to support patient care, rejecting units or even a batch due to product quality deficiencies must be avoided. In order to meet this demand, manufacturers must have in place processes capable to produce at low defect rates and have inspection systems able to identify and reject atypical units. It's the fundamentals of good manufacturing practices, process capability and control that will assure availability of the product in times of unexpected and unprecedented need. These capabilities must be built, qualified, and maintained long before the crisis to avoid having to make the difficult risk assessment on product impacted by a quality deficiency. Programs such as the Visual Inspection Forum help us to achieve the highest quality and level of product that will be released for patient care. This is critically important when you think about matters such as potential drug shortages, where there's considerable pressure to perhaps provide product that doesn't always meet those high quality standards. We must maintain the standards, and we have to have systems in place long before a crisis, whether a pandemic, a natural disaster, or other immediate need, in order to assure the highest level of patient safety and therapeutic benefit. I've had the opportunity to attend many of these conferences, and I would say that this agenda stacks up as one of the best. Our technological capabilities advance not just with detection, but systems qualification, particle characterization, and artificial intelligence capabilities. This visual inspection program always provides for new learnings and interaction with subject matter experts. I hope you'll join us in person when the forum convenes in Berlin. Thank you.
So, Romain, I know you have been a longtime participant in this meeting, and maybe for those who have not attended the Visual Inspection Forum in the past, you might just comment about your experiences at this meeting, what they might expect in attending the Visual Inspection Forum.
I think what is very excellent in this kind of meeting at PDA is that we cover both regulatory perspective, because that's really the baseline. So what are the expectations from the regulator from both US and Europe? And then we move up to manual inspection, kit preparation, automated inspection with vendor participation, because we need the input from the different vendors, new technology like deep learning. That is certainly a way to cover in the years to come the huge demand we will have with parenteral inspection.
Great. No, I think that's one of the things that I've always enjoyed is the diversity of topics, because as you mentioned, we're very much a regulated industry, and it's not only a matter of using this new technology, but using it well in a regulated environment. So I think one of the things we often get is the ability to share with each other some of our lessons learned, things that have worked well, and maybe some things that haven't always worked well, to make it easier the next time around. The other thing I wanted to ask you to maybe comment on, a part of this meeting is always the vendor exhibition. We get to see the latest, the newest technologies that are commercially available to meet our needs when we're working in the area of visual inspection. And can you maybe comment on what attendees might see with regard to the vendor exhibition?
I think what is interesting is that when traveling to Europe at Berlin, you have a unique opportunity to see most of vendor, because lots are located in Europe. So it's always a good opportunity to even combine it with a tour of supplier. And during the conference, I think you have unique opportunity to see some vendor concept and also case study. And I think at PDA, we insist a lot on end user case study, because it's not just a matter of trying to find the best machine, but it's how to validate it and to feed the pipeline to this regulated industry.
I think that's a good point. And again, I really have always enjoyed every year. I mean, I always learn something new. There is a range of people who are new to the field and who are rapidly learning this area. And so this is a chance for them to take a quick deep dive and learn quickly. And there are those who are very experienced, who have attended this meeting for many, many years. and bring that experience and share it with those in attendance. So I think it's kind of nice to see the diversity of experience and the sharing of that experience at this meeting.
And also, I think it's a permanent evolving industry, and it goes very fast over the last years. If you just look some years ago about camera resolution, it has boosted the number of the image processing algorithm we've got. I mean, now we are entering into the artificial intelligence, and so even for the old dinosaurs that have been running around for years, we need to reinvent ourselves permanently. And I think the regulated environment around it needs to be reinvented also. Do you want to comment, John, around this part?
Well, I think that's true. And to be honest with you, today, I think the regulatory environment is focused very much on manual inspection. If you look at any of the pharmacopoeias, the reference method for visual inspection is holding it up, looking at it with your eyes under controlled conditions. So it's not an uncontrolled process. It can be a very effective process, but it has limitations. And I think one of the things, especially when we're talking about rapidly delivering millions of units to the world, the need for automated inspection is critical. And I know you and I know from personal experience that it can take a year or longer to validate an automated inspection system. And in some cases, those projects are multiple years. It may take more than a year to procure the instrument and then another year to validate it. And so you're now very far off from gaining the benefits of automated inspection. I know the vendors are working hard to be able to deliver machines more quickly, and we're seeing some definite advances there. And your reference to AI, automated intelligence, as a tool for rapidly programming, rapidly configuring these machines for specific products offers hopefully some very powerful tools to expedite that process. But getting back to the regulatory side, we also have to work with our regulators to make them comfortable with these very different approaches to inspection, to validation. So I think we have our challenges in front of us. And one of the things I hope coming from this meeting is to be able to have a bit more discussion on that topic. We've made that a centerpiece of this meeting, as well as focusing on not only the technology, but the regulatory component as well.
Thank you, John. And maybe I could add something is that over the years, if you look at recent machines, they are not becoming more and more simple. They are becoming more and more complex. We put more and more camera, sometimes two turrets, two complex conveyor. And so in terms of risk-based approach for validation, I think we have a lot to learn from each other. And I think it's a unique opportunity during this conference to benchmark and to calibrate ourselves to see if we have the good approach. Because on one hand, we have some pressure to simplify, but on the other hand, it's not getting more simple.
No, I think you make an excellent point. I often make the comparison to the phones. They're not getting simpler. They're getting more and more powerful with each model that we purchase. And that's true. The vendors, to their credit, want to put more and more capability into the machines that they're selling. But this does pose some challenges, especially from a validation perspective. So I think we have our work cut out for us.
Thank you, John. I think to reinvent myself, it's always to be at the cutting edge of science. Now what I try to do is to work with data scientists because we have more and more data science around. So I'm trying to deep dive in the machine, to try to program myself, to learn. Not meaning we can step away from the vendor, but to be able to understand what they propose, to be able to understand the validation strategy. And I can give you some example. Now that we're learning with artificial intelligence, there are a lot of pitfalls in front of us. Very stupid one. I can give you a practical example. Some weeks ago, we were training an artificial intelligence neural network, and we had a bias. We discovered a stupid bias because the conforming vials were not aligned with the defect kit vials. The image were not taken at the same speed. And there were just 15 pixels difference between these two clusters of vials, the conforming and the defect. So normally with classical vision, there are tools to make it happen and it's not a problem. But there we had a bias. And thanks to data scientists, we were able to find this bias and to correct the problem. If I would have not been digging into the algorithm, working with data scientists to build complex visualization tool with just commercial packaging, I would just gone into the wall. And so it gives you example where we need to keep reinventing yourself to be able to master those complexity today.
And just to add to that, Romain, your analogy of a dinosaur, and I'll wander the earth as a dinosaur with you. We've both seen a lot. One of the things that I think I've always found helpful was to look outside our industry. And I think you've done more work than I actually in the area of AI, but the work that's been done didn't originate in the pharmaceutical industry. There's been some great progress using AI in a number of different fields where images are processed and analyzed. And so sometimes we as an industry are hesitant to reach out and take advantage of some of these new technologies that we didn't develop. And this is, I think, a good example of where we can learn from others and shorten that learning curve by taking advantage of the lessons learned there. The other thing I want to acknowledge is your efforts. You've recently put together a team within PDA to bring together experts in the area of visual inspection and AI to help move this technology forward and provide some guidance. And here it's an opportunity for us to learn from each other. And I'm very much looking forward to participating on that task force and contributing what I know, but frankly, also learning from yourself and other experts in this field. And then we'll have the opportunity to share that with the PDA membership through a PDA publication. So maybe you want to talk a little bit more about those efforts as well.
Yes, thank you, John. So we started last year at the PDA conference in Bethesda, where we had a nice presentation of Amgen team, and we took contact with them. Then we took contact with some Novo people, and then we took contact with some other. We had a nice interest group meeting in Berlin, where we architect the design of a point to consider document, and then we started to reflect each other with more companies, more vendors, and now we have a small group. We just kick off last week the group, and I think you're part of it. It's important also that we have USP member as you part of it, but also member from artificial intelligence software companies, but also machine vendor specialized in artificial intelligence, but also case user, people who are really working. And also we have put in this small group of experts a data scientist. I think he will guide us in the scientific pitfalls we need to avoid. But really the idea of this group is to publish a document, a point to consider document about how to develop and validate an artificial intelligence for visual inspection. That's quite ambition, but I think we are quite agile in our group, and I'm hopeful that we'll get there. And so to the next meeting, we will give a talk about what are the preliminary achievement of our paper.
I think you make a good point there that really the scope is not just to use the technology, but it really has to be validatable in our pharmaceutical regulatory environment, because without that, you really don't get the benefit of this new technology. So it's not only understanding the technology, showing that it can effectively perform the visual inspection task, but meeting all of our expectations from a regulatory standpoint as well. And so I think that's exciting to bring together that group of experts to hopefully provide some good guidance and maybe remove some of the barriers that otherwise might be there to implementing this new technology.
And I think the ultimate goal is really to target the quality assurance, to give confidence with these new technologies, and to target the regulator, to educate the regulator, but also to give confidence that those technology will bring performance and trust.
Yes, absolutely.
So in the section number 3, we decided to put the focus on the technology innovation, and you will see that we have some very interesting presentation on difficult to inspect product like soft bags, and even a presentation on the very last state-of-the-art technology on deep learning applied to such an important products like a vaccine. So you will see a lot of very, very interesting new ideas and new technologies applied in the field, not just a theory. But of course, this new technology need also a correct approach to be implemented in the field. And we will see in the last presentation how this will be done using the risk analysis. So from one side, the increasing resolution and speed of cameras is giving us a lot more capabilities to detect with a higher precision, with a higher resolution, the defects, and in the same time reducing the false reject because we have more information on which to make our judgment. On the other side, this incredible amount of data that nowadays we have available will be usefulness without new approaches like deep learning that is able to, let's say, digest all this big amount of data and recognize the anomalies from the standard production, even in presence of natural deviation. So this new approach that is completely different from the classical vision inspection is providing us a lot of benefits in better detecting the defects and incredibly reducing the false reject in production. But I think that the main advantages in attending this session is to come in touch with the presenters and be able to exchange with them ideas and the difficulties of they have found during the development of their job, because this experience could be beneficial to the other to implement similar approaches in their application. I'm personally very interested in seeing how the new generation approach the field. So I'm very, very positive in seeing more and more contribution coming from university, from students that collaborate with the pharmaceutical industry in investigating these new technologies and implementing new ideas that sometimes come from adjacent market, like you have seen the Google experience in the autonomous driving or in the recognition of face that now is becoming technologies that we are adapting to the pharmaceutical field. And this cross-contamination between university and the pharmaceutical industry will be fundamental for the future of our sector.
So John, you will be moderating a session about regulatory perspective with visual inspection. Can you tell us more about it?
Certainly. So obviously the regulatory world as well as the technology is constantly evolving. And we know that there are changes coming to Annex 1, the GMPs for sterile medicinal products in Europe, very important document. And that has gone from a relatively brief reference to the visual inspection process to many more points that are going to be giving us guidance. But there are also some very other important practical aspects to the implementation. So we're going to go through those details and talk about how that will influence us going forward. And frankly, those kind of documents, while they are regional, in this case for Europe, they have a global impact because many of the suppliers in the pharmaceutical industry are global suppliers and look to have a process that will meet the overall global requirements. We're updating USP 1790, which is the chapter that provides guidance, not regulation, but guidance on the visual inspection process. And I'm happy to say that I see good alignment between what's coming in Annex 1, what we have written in 1790, some of the updates that we're making to 1790. So those things hopefully will allow for a solid global framework that manufacturers can look to for guidance on the regulations for visual inspection.
And John, will you have some participants from authorities, national authorities, and from pharmacopoeias at this session?
So in that session, we have Gabriel Berbari from ANSM, who is going to be speaking about the French inspectorate. And then, as I mentioned, I'll be talking about the USP. And then we do have Hans Christian Mahler from Lanza, who will be giving an update on the European pharmacopoeia. So I think we have a nice range of perspectives from a consultant sort of bridging the manufacturing side and the regulatory side. We have a regulator and we also have a manufacturer. So hopefully we can give a broad perspective on this topic with, I think, a focus on Europe and the US, but really meant to be a global focus as well. And so one of the other sessions we're going to talk about is the use of standards in the visual inspection process. And I know I'm going to, moderate that session. And we have both someone, Sven Maas, who is very experienced in preparing these standards. He's made many standard sets and can share his experience in terms of preparing standard sets. And then we also have a speaker from Eli Lilly, who's going to talk more about the use of these standards in qualifying inspectors. And I thought maybe to turn it back to you, you might comment a little bit about how you use standards when you're evaluating, qualifying, validating your inspection processes.
I think this session will be very interesting because, that's the baseline, the standard that you use. And in our company, we have a team working on standard development and manufacturing that's really central and key for us. And I think there the experience of Sven Maas developing those reference standards is really key, and it's really our baseline. And also the Lilly team has done a tremendous study, a multi-site study concerning manual inspection baseline performance. And I think that's really interesting that they come to this conference to share their input on that hot topic.
No, I think that's very helpful because even when you look to the pharmacopoeias, the expectation is that any alternative method, like an automated inspection system, will be equivalent to or better than manual inspection. So having a good understanding of manual inspection process capability, I think, is very important, even if the end inspection process isn't a manual process. So those studies are very valuable and very helpful. And I always like to say, without good standards, you really don't know what your process is capable of, both how good it is or maybe some of the gaps that are present. And so the use of standards is very helpful in documenting the process capability, and I think a very important part in developing as well as validating, qualifying any inspection process that we have.
No, thank you, John. Certainly a very important session in this conference, yeah.
Are there any other sessions that you might want to comment on? I know we've talked about the automated inspection sessions, but when you look at the agenda, is there anything there that you might want to comment on, Romain?
Yeah, maybe we could comment a bit on the difficult to inspect parenteral session, because I think there was this document, the Tier 79, that was published some years ago. But since we see that there are more and more difficult to inspect parenteral on the market, because lyophilized form is becoming predominant in the new biological drugs, you have some dense emulsion, dense suspension, difficult syringe or ampoules or vials to be inspected. So more and more we see blow-fill seal also coming back on the inspection field. So you see, John, it's a very hot topic, the difficult to inspect. Do you want to comment that?
Sure. No, I think you make an excellent point there. Oftentimes we could all wish that we had very nice and well-behaved products, clear solutions in a clear vial, but that's not the case. And as we go to more protein-based therapies, more complex therapies, they are more challenging to inspect. As you said, they're less stable, so we see more lyophilized, more freeze-dried products. They're less stable when exposed to light. So they're put in packages like amber glass that make them harder to inspect. So there are many things that fall in this difficult to inspect category. And again, we have to reach into our toolbox and bring out some new tools to inspect these difficult products. And I think, again, we can learn from each other. We can share. That was the goal with TR79, to share some of those lessons learned and provide some guidance. And we'll have some further discussion at this meeting on how we address those difficult to inspect products. And I think looking forward into the future, I think we will only see more of those, not fewer difficult to inspect products.
The session that I will be moderating at the Visual Inspection Forum is the inspection of cell therapy products and other difficult to inspect products. So difficult to inspect products, that means they are not the standard products or the most common products to and most easy products to do an inspection on. There are three presentations in this session, and two of them are on automated inspection of difficult to inspect products, and those are held by two companies that have a history in visual inspection. So it's a kind of amazing, difficult to inspect. You would think that does not lead itself to automation, but yet there are two presentations on automated inspection of such difficult to inspect products. So these are two presentations, I would say, that are more on a, let's say, the corrective aspect of visual inspection, while the third presentation is more of, I would say, has the character of prevention of visible particles to occur in the finished product. So it is a presentation on a more upstream product from aseptic filling, namely on the visual inspection of single-use assemblies. So particles that are not there in a single-use systems, of course, they cannot be detected anymore in visual inspection since they have been eliminated up front. So that is, I would say, kind of a special character of this session. For difficult to inspect products, what we see here is there is automation also that is progressing in making the visual inspection of these products possible. So it's not only manual inspection anymore or semi automated, it's about automation. The interesting thing is, part is about prevention of particles. It is in a, I would say, maybe a niche area of aseptic processing, namely with single use systems. But this niche is growing, and it's good to be informed on what the manufacturers of these single-use systems are doing to prevent particulate matter to enter into the, let's call it the filling stream of aseptic products. So that's really special. And then we will also hear about the progress that respected companies make and their efforts that they do in bringing automation into the visual inspection of these products that by their nature are difficult to inspect. A freeze-drying product, an emulsion, dispersion, that doesn't pair well with the visual inspection. Yet there is progress in this area, and it's worth hearing about it. Well, cell therapy is one of the therapies that comes more to the forefront, that is developing, and you see approaches or presentations on cell therapy in various areas, not only in the area of drug product development, also in development of adequate packaging systems for it, and of course, visual inspection also makes part of the things that are, with respect to cell therapy products, special. If you look at the totality of the program, you find various aspects in there, and in fact, PDA does here what they do. That is, they link regulatory science and technology. So what we find in this program is a part of regulatory. What we also find is a part on science, and there are sessions that are technology focused, the sessions on automation and, for instance, and on qualification of visual inspection.
Key topics in this session is particle identification and characterization. We have a case study, a very exciting case study about a new technology for characterizing or identifying particles. It came up probably 5 years ago, a new technology which enables us, or the community at least, to identify also very small particles. So the major tool for the identification so far was IR spectroscopy, but it is limited to big particles. And this new exciting new technology makes it possible to identify also particles as small as a few micrometers. Another key topic will be the PDA Zero Visible Defects project, which was brought up by PDA and is supported by all major companies in the pharmaceutical industry. And so it's very ambitious, because it's not possible to have zero defects by particles, but so it makes it a little bit more provocative, and so all companies attempt now to reduce the particle load in production or in the entire life cycle as far as possible. And in general, we have these two topics probably as a teaser in this session, but we have also room for a huge Q&A session, because many questions always arise about the characterization and identification of particles, and we have also room for a broad discussion on that. First of all, I'm sure it's the best session of the conference. Secondly, the particle characterization is the basis for the entire visible inspection process. So it gives you the information for the particle baseline if you're starting the visual inspection for a new product. It gives you the idea what kind of defects should I put into my test kits for the training of inspectors, and without test kits you can't train inspectors. Without training of inspectors you don't have a visible inspection process. So it's the basis for a risk assessment if you finally have a particle in your product. In that case, you have to check, well, is it dangerous for the patient? And so you need some information about the identity or the composition of this particle. Another point is for sure troubleshooting. So finally, if you have an overload on particles on your in your product, you need to find out the root cause to get rid of this particle source and to finally save your batch. I think these are all points which make this session very important for all of the attendees. And all the questions which came up on this meeting are very unique, and usually you can't find colleagues who can deal with your problem, and so that makes it very, very valuable. But also you find always very good information on current topics, but in the past we tried also to give a nice overview, for example, on regulatory topics, to give newcomers of this small community the possibility to step in this world of visual inspection.
We see more and more people developing supplemental testing for particulate matter, and there are different ways to approach this supplemental testing in terms of sampling size, single sampling, multi-stage sampling. So you can do reconstitution for lyophilize, filtering, dilution. There are many practical aspects around it, and I think people are still on the learning curve, I would say, on that approach.
That's certainly true. And again, we want to make sure that when we're using these techniques, that we're avoiding external contamination and the risk of a false positive. I often make the comparison to sterility testing and all the work that goes into using sterility test isolators, because the cost of a false positive is very high and very hard to investigate and overcome. I think we run into some of those same analogous situations when we're talking about visual inspection and supplemental testing. And so we have a range of different tools that we can use for these tests, but we have to be very careful when we perform them so we get accurate information and get a very accurate picture of the state of the batch that we are examining.
And you got it right, because those are quality decision tests, and that's really key that we are accurate and specific. Yeah.
Yes, very much so. And again, I think that brings us back to some of our earlier discussions where we are certainly making every effort to expedite therapies, vaccines in this global pandemic. But that doesn't mean that we can't ignore the patient safety concerns that come with visual inspection. We always want to go back to why are we doing this inspection in the first place? And that's to assure that we're providing safe, consistent, reliable products to the patients who need them.
Yeah, it's true. And it's not only trusting on visual inspection as a controlling step, but also it's a unique tool to permanently control the process. And the USP insists a lot on trend analysis. And we see now more and more in the Annex 1, there's the idea about trendings, track and trends. And I think in the coming years, there will be more and more emphasis on those aspects.
Absolutely. It's certainly, inspection is not just a matter of sorting the good ones from the bad ones, but also when you find defects in the visual inspection process, to understand and learn from those so that you can go back to the process, look to improve the process so those defects aren't present in the next batch or the batch after that. That leads to both better yields, which are better from an overall cost standpoint, and also overall more reliable supply. So there's a lot of valuable data. You were talking about data scientists. There's a lot of valuable data and information in the inspection results, other than just picking out the bad ones and letting the good ones go on to the customer.
Sometimes I have the tendency to say an AVI machine is not a vacuum cleaner. It's more a unique tool to detect any atypical production. And that's where it should be conceived, I think.
No, I like that comparison. That's a great comment. I want to be a little cautious because we believe these technologies can do this, but we haven't delivered yet. So I don't want to say absolutely everybody should be doing this because this is going to solve our problems. I think we need to be a little cautious, and maybe to talk more about education, because clearly sharing knowledge experiences is a key part of this. And Romain and I are both instructors for PDA, teaching courses in the area of visual inspection. I focus on the introductory and manual visual inspection. Romain, maybe you want to comment a little bit about your specialized course that you developed for automated visual inspection.
Yes, so the course Mastering so-called visual inspection is intended for people who are willing to acquire some new machines, who are willing to improve some existing machines, or improve performance, lead time, and mastery, because those machines are very complex, as I explained earlier, and we need to have a good understanding of the black box. That it's my ultimate goal at the end of the first day is that people understand what is inside the box, all the elements. So we will be covering all the elements of the inside of the machine, from the mechanical handling, the automation part, the vision part, the camera, the image processing, so that they have a general understanding. And then we'll be introducing the citation, the company citation, because I think that's very important that people have some awareness about the regulator expectation regarding the qualification and mastery of those technology. And then we'll be covering also some glass element, glass manufacturing impact to the false reject rate mastery. And I've learned a lot since I work in automatic vision inspection about glass mastery, because those are interlinked. And before that, I had no knowledge about that. But really, it's very important to know a bit of the glass manufacturing. And then I think at the end of the day, we have a workshop for the first day about how to purchase a machine, because it's something you need to be educated in front of your supplier, your vendor. And if you come well armed, I think it's not to go against them, but you will be sitting at the table with more power, with more efficiency, and there you will be able to acquire the best machine for your process. So really, it's very important. And I've seen a lot of suppliers coming to this course being very, very pleased to see the approach about developing a rational URS. That's very important. And then the second day, we will enter up in risk-based approach for validation. Defect kit, we already talked, that's really key to have a good defect kit and to set it up from the beginning. And then we'll be covering also the maintenance. Really, at the end of those 2 days, you could be able to know which capabilities you need to develop within your company to master this.
No, that's good. And in the introduction to visual inspection course that we developed, we try to provide the framework, both the regulatory requirements for visual inspection, where those come from, why we do what we do, the basic science, especially for manual visual inspection, and then we give the students a hands-on opportunity to do inspection. And we have people who've never inspected before and may not be routine inspectors, but it gives them the opportunity to understand more what that process looks like and what the challenges are. And then we go through a very organized, structured way of looking at what happens when you change some of the key variables, the amount of light, the inspection time, how you manipulate the containers for inspection. And so we try to give a good foundation, and some people will stop there and go back and be doing manual inspection. Others will use that and apply that to the course that you just described for automated inspection. So I think those two fit together quite well.
And I think the manual inspection sometimes is a prerequisite before going to automated, because if you understand well the standard work, workflow, the critical process parameter around manual inspection, that's a first entry door to go to automatic. Do you want to comment, John?
Well, I certainly fully agree with that. I was actually just going to kind of talk a little bit more about some of the other resources that are available with regard to education, and that is looking at some of the PDA publications. You referenced the PDA Technical Report 79, which I think is a very helpful reference, as well as PDA Technical Reports 43 and 76, which describe defects in glass or in elastomeric closures and seals. I think those are very helpful guidances for any inspection program. You'll also find useful information. There are books on visual inspection from the PDA bookstore. You'll also find articles on visual inspection in the PDA journal or the PDA letter. And we also have PDA Connect, which these days there's, everybody has a social media platform. That's PDA's social media platform. And there are ongoing discussions on the topic of visual inspection as well. So especially in these days when we can't travel, it's a way to connect with your colleagues and have, I think, very valuable conversations on very pertinent topics. So there's a number of resources that you can tap into as a PDA member in order to be able to gain additional information on many topics when it comes to pharmaceutical product manufacturing, quality, and regulation, but specifically in the area of visual inspection. I just wanted to take this opportunity to say how much I'm looking forward to being in Berlin this fall. The Visual Inspection Forum will be October 19th and 20th. We have a great program that is put together, and I hope to see you all in Berlin.
Oh, in my opinion, this is a unique opportunity to put together the expert from all the world, worldwide, that works on visual inspection, and is a unique opportunity to have them exchange their experience, the issue that they have found during their job, the new technologies and new idea that they have developed. So it's a really an amazing event to attend.
What makes Visual Inspection Forum unique is that it is a forum where you can do various things. It's a unique opportunity to keep yourself up to date on what is going on in visual inspection. You can also use it as an introduction to visual inspection that will be at a bit more advanced level, but you can use it as an introduction. And then apart from the presentations, there is also, and that is the case for all PDA sessions, there is ample opportunity for networking and for exchange of IDs. The last attractive thing that I would like to mention here is that the co-chairs, they are awesome. In a sense, they are specialists in their fields and well-respected people with lots of experience and somebody who wants to learn. They are very accessible on this conference.
I'm looking forward for the Visual Inspection Forum. I'm looking for good food, for some beers, and for a good networking, which seems to be one of the most important parts of this meeting. You have to consider it's a very, very small community. It has only probably 500 or 700 people on this world which are dealing with this topic. And so you have at this meeting, which is there over 20 years now, the opportunity to meet at least 20% of these people.
So, John, you confirm we will be having this conference later this fall after the COVID crisis?
Yes, absolutely. I think we certainly responsibly needed to postpone the meeting because of the risk to individuals to have an in-person meeting. But I think the value that visual inspection offers with regard to the overall delivery of safe, effective medicines in general, but specifically here to treat COVID-19, I think are very important. And so getting together to be able to address this, look at techniques that may allow us to more quickly bring those therapies to market, I think will be very important in the overall process.
So we'll be back in October, the 19th and 20th in Berlin to have a great agenda. We already made it for this spring, but we'll have more time to fine tune, but we'll be back soon.
And I also want to remind everybody that we will have the two-day conference as we always have, and then we have a training course, a two-day training course that follows that. So for those who want to get more hands-on experience with visual inspection, that's an option for them as well. It will be in the same venue, just the 2 days that follow the Visual Inspection Forum. So again, depending upon your interests and needs, I think that's a great opportunity to, again, continue the discussion and look for ways to expedite the delivery of these products.